All right, what is going on, everyone? Casey Adams here. Welcome back to the Rise of the Young podcast. Today, I have Charles Yim here with us. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks, Casey. Been waiting to do this for quite some time.
I appreciate it. So, we first met. I know been connected on Instagram, but you're in the venture capital world, and you're someone that I've always looked at on social, where I'm like, he has so many projects going on. And when we first had our first meeting, I was amazed by what I learned about venture capital. But for everyone that may not know where you currently spend your time, what would you describe as what you do?
No day is ever the same. Like today, I showed you my calendar just now. I did a couple investments, advised a few portfolio companies, worked on some of my portfolio companies personally, visited a friend, and then now I'm here doing a podcast with you. So every single day is different, and I think that keeps things fresh and really stimulating, and that's my life now, so I can't complain.
As a venture capitalist, how are you looking at companies? I know you have a lot of different types of companies that you invest into, and what do you call it? You call it venture studio. Venture studio, that's what you call it.
Yeah, so for me now I have CMY Ventures. Basically it's a hybrid. It's both a hybrid of a studio, which deploys a new concept every 3 months, and then the other part of it is basically a fund. So I'll capitalize, form the team, potentially I'll be interim CEO, and at the right time it hits escape velocity, I'll switch out. Like I said to you earlier, place a CEO in place that's actually had an incredible amount of experience and a great background. Then I'll pull out, take an executive chairman board role, and I'll let that horse kind of run its course.
Very cool. Yeah. So where did this all start when it comes to the venture world? How did you end up getting into that space?
Yeah, so long story, but I'll make it short. So basically, I was raised by a single mom. My mom immigrated from Hong Kong, actually, with just a couple $100 in her pocket. It didn't work out between my mom and my biological father, and so she had to take care of us. She was on welfare, food stamps, and so my brother and I saw our mom struggle at a really young age, and that's hard on two boys.
Totally.
And it gets to you mentally, right, and emotionally, and so just that stemming, just deep-hearted, rooted situation really reflected, and impacted us in a certain way. And I remember my bigger brother, he was a little taller than me at the time, he's 2 years older, and he's like, taps on my shoulder, he looks down at me, he says, "Hey, let's never let mom ever be in this position ever again." And so I remember that, and fast forward, my brother's done very well. He's one of the founding engineers of Beats by Dre. So my brother's doing fairly well now. And for myself, you kind of know my story, but I'll start from scratch. My mom got remarried, and my stepfather was part of the early team of Oracle. Larry Ellison, an early team with Steve Jobs. And so, he had a lot of influence on me kind of in my later years as a teenager. He said, "Hey, I was pretty much born and raised in San Francisco." And he said, "Hey, Silicon Valley's right in your backyard. Why don't you give software a chance?" And that's what I did. I got an opportunity at Oracle, because he worked at Oracle at the time, Google, but they were both kind of mid-stage. And a recruiter actually knocked on my door. It was a company called Sportify Software. I was an early employee, and long story short, it was enterprise application security. And what they did was they basically analyzed all the code for banks, like Citibank. And there's this boring thing called PCI compliance, right? And the whole bottom line with that business is that they made sure that all the hackers, Russian hackers that were literally stealing 150, 200, $300 million at a time, just within minutes, right?
That's insane.
They would basically analyze the code, and they'd come to realize that, hey, there's a vulnerability, so they'd patch it up. So that's what the company did within a short 1 year stint. We're at about 125 employees, sold it for $250 million to HP. So I was with HP for a very short stint. After the acquisition, I came to realize that corporate wasn't for me, and I acquired the majority of the soft and hard skills. But the board itself, it was made up of one individual who was PayPal Mafia. And I'll always thank him to this very day. His name is Chuck Geiger. He's the CTO of eBay PayPal alongside Meg Whitman, pre and post IPO. And so he basically took me under his mentorship for about 5 years. I started my very first startup. It was called Shatterfly. It was the first iOS app for mobile loyalty. So think of a buy 10, get one free card. A digitized version of that, and it's called Shatterfly. I rolled it out. We were in the majority of the 10,000 Main Street Americas, United States. I ran that for 3 years. I hired the director of engineering out of Facebook, Karthik, and he built the Cassandra project for Zuckerberg. So I pulled him in. Insane. We had a long, nimble, I would say, team, a software engineering team. I eventually brought in my CTO, Jackson Hull. We got that acquired for roughly about $30 million in total value, cash and stock. I own a good chunk of the cap table.
Yeah.
That set me up pretty nicely. And by then I was about 27.
Okay.
So I was a multimillionaire again, first at 23, 24, then again at 27, but all on my own.
Yeah.
Company I founded from start to finish, 3 years in. And so I was pretty happy with that. Got into kind of a golden handcuffs, as you say. I got into a 1-year acqui-hire contract with the company that acquired us, which was Plum District. It was during the Daily Deal era, and Plum District was the Groupon for moms.
Okay.
Backed by Kleiner Perkins, and I was VP of mobile and design there for about a year. And by then, when you get a company acquired, basically, you have time to kind of cruise, right? You're doing your work, but I was already thinking about the next thing. And I came down to 4 ideas. I won't ever forget it. It was Instagram for video, which was Snapchat now.
Yeah.
Didn't go for it. Second one was kind of silly. It was Whisper, which is kind of like anonymized kind of rants and comments, but you're anonymous.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a rumor mill. I didn't see much utility to that, thank God, because the company Whisper that did do it raised like 25 mil. They crashed.
Yeah.
The third one was Uber for house cleaning. It didn't sound too sexy, but I look back, I mean, the company's called Handy now.
Yep.
It's got a multi-billion-dollar valuation unicorn, did really great, props to the founder. Didn't go down that route, but I chose the fourth idea, which was inventing the smartphone breathalyzer. And the interesting story about that was I was while I was at Plum District, basically I was out with my engineering and design team. We were at a bar, we're doing a bonding session, right?
Yep.
And then the team, started having too many beers. Long story short, I was always the designated driver back in college, and kind of put two and two together because there was a square dongle on the bar, on the counter at the bar, and I was like, why couldn't I swap out that sensor inside? So I called my brother actually, and I said, hey, hardware, and I want to go into hardware,
yep.
right? I want to learn that game too, and I asked him, I said, can we swap that sensor out? And so within 24 hours, we made contact with the Japanese sensor supplier. They said, hey, there's an off-the-shelf sensor. Here you go. Plugged it in. We had a working prototype in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Got it on Indiegogo. I was one of the first crowdfunding pioneers on Indiegogo. Acquired 4,000 customers. Knew that we had product market, validation and what
yep.
have you. That got the attention of you have Clay Newbill and Mark Burnett of Shark Tank.
Yep.
And then so that landed me on Shark Tank. It's an interesting story there in a nutshell is they called me actually and they gave me a secret password, Constantinople, and they said, we want you to fly down to Hollywood and do the casting. So there was like 1,000+ entrepreneurs in line. I walked right up front and I had the Breathometer shirt, kind of corny, I have to admit. Anyway, I walk and I feel really bad because I was like, I'm cutting in line, They're like, we've been waiting for you. So I was the first person literally to film that day.
Really?
They were waiting for me and I went in front. I had nothing on me but my shirt and the device, and they're like, they bring me in the room, everything's like empty.
Yep.
And I was like, what do I got to do? They're like, tell us your name, your age, where you're from, and what's your company. So I did exactly that, pulled out the device, did a breath test, did the demo, and they called me basically a couple days later and said, we want you on the show. So I went on the show. I honestly was aiming for Mark Cuban because he's only a tech-oriented, shark on there. Lo and behold, outside of just a marketing opportunity, I ended up with all 5 celebrity sharks on the show.
Everyone invested,
made history on the show, and been on 10 times since. Behind the scenes, collaborated with other, Shark entrepreneurs, Shark Tank entrepreneurs, and the rest has been history. I think that kind of kick-started things because I did Richard Branson's version of Shark Tank, and out of 20,000 startups, I ranked number 1.
Wow.
So
what is that called again?
It's called Extreme Tech Challenge.
Okay.
And I got funding out of that as well, and now I'm friends with Richard, and I can't be more thankful. Looking to have him potentially even endorse my new book that's coming out.
Yep.
I'll drop it on this on this podcast. My new book's coming out. It's kind of segue. It's called The Art of the Shark Tank Pitch.
Wow.
But it's the A to Z in terms of how to crafting, crystallize the perfect pitch, regardless of whatever your product or service is. So that's coming out in a couple months, and as well as the podcast that we've been kind of collaborating
I'm
on.
excited.
Yeah, so just kind of fast forward, that company's still around, probably going to exit in the next year or two, actually now working on a COVID-19 breathalyzer. Really? Which I think is probably the billion-dollar play.
That is great opportunity.
Yeah, and it's helping the world, right? And so now I'm 37, I'm now focused more on passion projects, and I'm not doing it because it's fun. I'm doing it because there's a real genuine cause.
Totally.
And that I can really change the world. And there's a new definition of a billionaire, right? It's impacting 1 billion people, not making $1 billion, right? And so I'm now focused on sustainability, anything that I know, health and wellness, hardware, medical device, consumer, generally. So I have a plant-based superfood company called Vitable.
Yep.
Right.
I always see you posting about it. It looks amazing. I've not tried it yet.
That's Have you watched the documentary Game Changers on Netflix?
Yeah.
That's kind of what kind of inspired me to do that outside of now, living kind of this new healthy lifestyle.
Yep.
And then secondly, I have the co-living company. I have a Joshua Tree project with the mineral water and that, whole eco-friendly solar pod kind of experience. So that's fun.
You have a lot going on,
I have
man.
an AI company, right? The dance-off app I'm about to release. I'll drop that on here too.
Yeah, we were talking about it for a while now.
Yeah, it's actually about to launch in the Apple App Store in about a week. It's like Dance Dance Revolution in your pocket.
Yep.
So I'll show that to you later. But anyway, I have my portfolio under my studios, and I also personally angel invest into very cool projects that I think that are very relevant. But overall, the revolving thesis that I follow is anything related to similar to the United Nations initiatives. So it's sustainability. So it's clean water, clean air, right?
Yep.
Anything with health and wellness, right? Anything that can improve a human life. So it's more about giving back now. I'm very fortunate to be where I am today. I have a lot of mentors, whether it's Cuban or whether it's Richard Branson. So I'm just kind of trying to give it back and pay it forward. And you got young guys like you crushing the game, much younger now. And I just noticed the Gen Z, I would say demographic versus the millennials, the Gen Z are coming up a lot quicker. They're learning fast. And I think because of COVID, things are changed, right? The educational paradigm shifted, working remote, learning
even
remote.
Colleges.
Yeah, college degrees, do they really matter? I took, a lot of my education from Stanford. I'm alumni there. I was part of the Stanford StartX Accelerator. And I look back and it was great education. I wouldn't change it for the world, but does a Stanford degree really hold that much weight like it used to? And I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I think it's only relevant if you're a scientist or a doctor, but if you're not, you got to go ahead and acquire the skill sets and the education. You can't beat experience.
Yeah.
Right. Just doing it.
Absolutely.
So for the entrepreneurs out there, just go out there, just get it done. Find mentors, find advisors. But that's what I did, and we're all still learning. I still even also have an executive coach myself. But,
how have you been able to find all these mentors? I know I look at you as someone in my network where it's like, if I want to get in touch with anyone in Silicon Valley, you're the guy, right? And I know that you have so many of these amazing relationships. Where did that start? Because there's a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that have done great in business, but they aren't with the Mark Cubans and the Richard Branson. So how have you been able to build this network while building your companies? Yeah, so
a good portion of it is intention, right? I also, part of my book covers how to utilize LinkedIn as a great solution, great tool, right? I believe because of LinkedIn, no one's unreachable. So if you don't have a network, you can build it starting today. Build out a really expansive LinkedIn profile and then start linking with the right people.
Totally.
If you're in the glass industry, if you're in the shoe industry, if you're in the podcast industry, everyone can be reached. And if you need to use social media like Instagram, Facebook, just be smart about it. They always say your network is your net worth.
Yep.
And I wholeheartedly am, a breathing version of that. And so I spend the time to cultivate my relationships, and then those people know other people. So it's kind of a ripple effect. So
I love that.
Yeah. So it's kind of organic, but at the same time, it was a little bit of luck.
Yeah. When it comes to being a venture capitalist, how are you managing your time, and how do you analyze deals? I'm sure you have dozens of deals come across your plate every day. How are you looking at them, and what makes you on one versus saying no?
Yeah, there's a book I read recently. It's called The Power of Saying No. And it's really being able to dilate, right, and create a vernacular, a lens in terms of what are you passionate about. So I was talking about myself in terms of I'm focused on sustainability. I'm focused on health and wellness. All consumer. All of it's only consumer. I think going back to Fortify, it was a very boring job, boring startup, some enterprise, long sales cycles, and it was security of all things. I learned very quickly consumer is what floats my boat. I was always kind of that lemonade stand kid. I was always a hustler and entrepreneur. But then within tech, I focus on specifically things that really resonate with me. So because again, I'm on this health kick, plant-based superfood, Vitable, Vita Juice, Vita Bites, right? And then co-living, right? I have the X-Men of co-living, Cohabit. So that's something that really garnered my interest. And so I said, it doesn't exist, I'll build it, right? And
what is that exactly?
So Cohabit basically take co-living, but it's the X-Men of co-living. So they live in mansions, and there's these super entrepreneurs or super VCs. Like a place like this, right? You got maybe 10 rooms, and you got 10 very, very intelligent, super successful entrepreneurs or VCs. And I guarantee you, within a year's worth of time, you'll have 10 beautiful companies that come out of that, right? And it's just because they're living together, eating, breathing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I built that company based on personal preference. So I follow my passions, I do my due diligence, I do focus groups, I talk to the potential customer. If they say I'll buy in, you have a business, right? Then the next question lies in, can you scale it? So just find out what resonates with you, create a thesis. Some people are really hardcore into gaming. Some people are really, right? Like, you can develop services around your passions.
I love that, man. When you're saying no to deals, I mean, for anyone that's out there is looking to pitch an investor, what's your advice to them when going to raise capital?
First of all, know your shit. And the book that's coming out tells you know your numbers, right? Know your business inside out. Anticipate the questions that are going to come to you. Do research on your investor.
Totally.
I mean, you need to know what they ate for fucking breakfast. Pardon, I don't know if I should be cussing on your show, but yeah, you need to know everything, in and out, right, about them and what they're looking for. So when you're literally, whether you're on set, in my case, or you're meeting them at their house, you know exactly what questions that or anticipate the questions they're going to ask. Know what you want to ask. It's a two-way street, right? It's a marriage, right?
Totally.
You have every equal right to ask the questions of the investors they're asking of you, but know your shit inside and out, right? Know your market, know your customer, right? Know your product, right? And if you actually have something to show that you can demo, always demo your product. Always demo. And in the art of the Shark Tank pitch, I hit on this so much. If you'll notice on Shark Tank when I was on set, I did very little talking, 45 seconds, had everyone hooked in, and boom, I busted out my smartphone breathalyzer. Lori came up, did the breath test, obviously set it up with the champagne. She clocked 0.04%. They were sold. At that point, it's like, let's negotiate, let's get the deal done.
Love that. So having the product to show them is the most critical thing.
100%. Right.
Love that. If you're going back in time, during time 2020, and there's young entrepreneurs out there, what's your advice to them that having all this experience that you do now?
So that's a fully loaded question. I would say it's really based on your age and where you are in your life. Like you're young. Take, a big fan of Gary Vee. Like, take every chance, every risk you can, and follow your dreams. I think as you start nearing your late 20s, early 30s, in my opinion, I'm pretty hard on myself and my friends and my family. Better have your shit together. Like, hopefully you have some level of direction. You've made some level of accomplishments. But when you're in your 30s, like myself, you should already start, having success. And that's the point where you start really kind of dialing in to exactly what's your niche, what's your vertical, what are you really good at? None of us are good at everything. So just get good at one fucking thing. You're amazing at podcasts, right? That's why you're interviewing the best of the best. For me, I love tech, I love hardware, I love software. I'm really good at consumer. I understand the consumer psychology. So that's my bread and butter. Everything else, I say no to. I leave it to the experts, right? So just specialize in something, figure out what your passion is, but when you're in your 20s, experiment like hell. 30s, start doubling down. 40s, hopefully you're retired, on some island. Or you're happy wherever you are in your life.
I love that. When you are on Shark Tank, I think this is fascinating. You've been on there 10 times. What makes a deal work versus not? And what would you say about the whole experience of Shark Tank, right? I've watched this show for years now. I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there listening that have watched it. What was your just entire experience with the show, being on there, the after effects and everything that came from it? So I think in terms of the perfect pitch and making it work, it's multiple kind of check boxes, right? You have to have the right product, the right service. It's got to have product to market fit. Hopefully, before you go on there, you have some level of traction. So for the ones of you that want to jump on the show, there's a timing aspect there. Like, if you just have an idea, don't go on. If you're still testing the idea, don't go on. But if you actually deployed it, or you've done an Indiegogo campaign, you've actually started doing some product beta testing, and you see some proof of traction, you see people willing to pay for it, then that's probably kind of the litmus test, right? But then when you go on there, make sure you're able to pitch it in a very articulate manner. Again, know your numbers, demo it if you can, have an emotional hook if you can, connect and know everyone that's going to be on set. But it's nothing really that much different than doing in real life. When I went on there, I held my own because I had thousands of board meetings. I already sold 2 companies by then. So I had my shit together. But for the ones that are the up and comers, especially the Gen Z,
just make sure, you check all those boxes off, and you know your stuff. You got everything lined up. It's like a homework assignment, right?
Totally.
Or you're doing your dissertation. You're not going to go in there empty-handed. It takes a lot of studying, prepping, and grinding, right? There's no substitution for it.
Love that.
Yeah.
When you sold your first company, what was that feeling like, and what happened on that day?
So when I sold Shatterfly, it's the exact opposite kind of I would say experience that you would think I had. Most people would probably be like partying and what have you. So majority of my team members, they went out, they had drinks, and they're calling me like, Charles, come out. I was actually at home sad and depressed. Wow. I was really sad because it was my first baby. Psychologically, I almost felt like someone took my kid from me.
Yeah.
It was my baby, right? So, I had, a good amount of money in the bank account, and I was, cheerful. I'm not gonna say I'm completely depressed, but I cashed a check, right? Made a big deposit. But I went home. I was laying in bed. I was kind of just like, rolling around and like, what do I do from now? What do I do from here, right? I completely let go of control of my baby. And it's no longer mine. But for me, my first experience was good and bad. Became a multi-millionaire, stoked about it. It's 27.
Yep.
But the sad part about it, I was like, okay, what do I do from here? That's like I put 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of founders fall in this trap. Like, your baby or your company is your identity. And for the first time, I detached myself. It's almost like I ripped my identity.
100%.
So, but then once you go through the second time, the third time, you just realize your company is a company. And it's an external entity than you, and you don't want to get too emotionally attached, but it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you want to be passionately connected, because that's why you're building it.
Totally.
So you just need to learn how to develop the mental maturity, the emotional maturity, to know that might come, and at that time, that date and time, if it does come, know that you got to kind of taper and peel back. Right, so it's experience. I go back to experience. There's a difference between someone in their 30s, and I have mentors in their 40s and 50s. You, at every phase of your life, at every stage of your entrepreneurial career, there's new sets of skills and kind of a new psychological development that you can build on.
Yep.
So, yeah.
What's your advice to people that are, looking to sell their company, that have the setup to do so?
Yeah.
Like, what have you learned from acquisitions and selling companies?
Yeah, great question. It's all about timing. Like for instance, take COVID, right? Had people known COVID was going to hit, there had been millions of companies, probably getting acquired and sold.
Yeah.
Some are still able to do it during this time, but it's all about timing. Mark Cuban sold broadcast.com to Yahoo at the right time. Months later, .com bust. Everyone lost out, right? Timing. Just know when to pull your chips off the table. And for me, you just got to look at the signs. How is the economy? How's your actual respective industry and market? How is it faring? Are the numbers going up or down? How many competitors are in the space? Is it a saturated market? How's your product selling through? If it's hardware, it's a service. And is it, recession proof? Is it long term? So there's a lot of variables you want to analyze in terms of just understanding when is the right time to get out. And at the same time, especially Gen Z versus millennials, I think we're getting, more and more impatient in terms of like how much money we want. A lot of the younger kids like yourself, they want the nice fancy toys and houses, whereas the later generations, like the baby boomers, they're patient. They waited till their 40s or 50s to really buy their midlife crisis sports car, right? I think there's a balance there. We're in the kind of economy sharing, kind of era now. So it's not about owning things as much these days. Don't get me wrong, a nice car is a nice car, nice house is a nice house. But I believe we're in the era of having beautiful experiences, and your health is your wealth. So good health, kind of paired up with, experiences and adventures. That's being rich. That's being wealthy. It's not the fucking Ferrari that you have. I've had a bunch of supercars. I have nothing right now, at least for now. Can't say for the future on my next exit. But for right now, man, I tripled down on, being on Richard Branson's private island, which I go to all the time, Necker Island, than having a Ferrari that sits there and I drive around LA. That to me doesn't satiate my appetite. I like building shit, being around really smart people like yourself, innovating, adding value to society, adding value to the world. Don't get me wrong, I like my nice fancy things now and then, but don't completely immerse yourself to the point where it's like it makes you. That shouldn't be your identity.
Love that. What have you learned from being on Richard Branson's private island? Obviously, it's private for a reason.
I mean, look, I'm fortunate, one of the few that's been on the island. I'm probably going back later this year too. If you want to come,
hey,
you're more than welcome.
Hey, I would love to come by.
I put a bunch of catamarans together, and we have, we go island hopping, and we all get to meet Richard and see Richard, so that's cool. But outside of that, I'm used to it, right? He's got his lemurs. Small fact, he actually has a majority of lemurs. That's a kind of a dying species. It's it's near extinct species.
He like owns the species.
He owns a majority of the species.
Wow.
And when the Hurricane Karina went through, it decimated, unfortunately, half of the population.
Wow.
But anyway, he saved a majority of them. Thank God. Yeah. It's like literally you're living on a private island. It's like a little mini zoo. It's got flamingos on there.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got like so many pools and views, and we all get to go kiteboarding.
So cool. I see. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. Like I have, and it's like it sounds like that dream island. That it's like whenever you get there, that's an experience we'll always remember.
Dude, we'll make it a reality, man.
Let's go.
We'll make it a reality.
2 more questions before we wrap up. How do you spend your time, right? You have so many projects going on. How do you spend your time on a day-to-day basis? I know you said every day isn't the same, but what does your daily schedule usually look like? Yeah,
I showed you my calendar. No day is ever the same. I will credit, and Natalia will love me for this. I have an amazing chief of staff that's been with me for about, almost close to 8+ years now. We've known each other for almost 10 years, but she's been incredible. So I leave it to her kind of to help me manage my schedule and kind of think for me, right? Do these things these days, line up this podcast with Casey today, and then you can rest tomorrow. So I really lean on having a really strong bench team and a staff that enables me to do what I do. So it's all about team, and then knowing how to manage your time. I can't stress for a lot of you guys, like, put everything in your calendar. If it's on my calendar, it doesn't exist. I'm a Nazi about my calendar. You'll see, like, everything's booked out. I know for the most part, separate of COVID times, right? Things are a little different now, but try to plan out ahead, months ahead, weeks ahead, days ahead. But the calendar, use your Google Calendar, man. Live by it. It's your Bible. Time efficiency, and make sure you're spending meetings with appropriate people. There's a lot of stuff these days we can just do by a phone call or Zoom call. You don't need to drive and spend 30 minutes to go somewhere unless you're doing a physical podcast. But just be smarter with your time.
Love that. Last thing before we wrap up, where's the best place for people to stay in touch with all the projects you have going on?
So I'm on Instagram at Charles M. Michael is my middle initial Yim. I'm on Instagram. It's the same on Facebook, Charles Michael Yim. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm very accessible on Instagram. And I have a big Shark Tank fan base, so I interact. I always give out tips. I'm always willing to mentor and help out. It's all about giving back.
Totally.
Especially to the younger kids. So the ones especially that remind me of myself. I'm always willing to help. So
I love that. I'll make sure to link that down below so that everyone can check it out.
And just one message. I've gone through a lot of turbulent times as an entrepreneur in my past. You will have hard times. Like, I'll give you an example. Perthometer. I had a product recall way back when. Got knocked down with the FTC for $5 million. Got back up. It was, it happens. Fitbit had a product recall. Jawbone had a product recall. Samsung had a product recall. Philips even did. So it happens. But the point is, whether it's funding, whether you're not going after the right customer, whether you have a big mistake or a blow up in terms of the team or the founding team, because a lot of founders always fight, something's always going to happen. Or maybe your board wants to take over your company, which has tried to almost happen to me once. You need to just persevere, stay focused, have faith, and have passion, right, to just kind of see it through. So the ones that are maybe down on their luck, and especially during COVID times, right? I mean, my buddy of mine had a $6 million funded travel company that was out of Y Combinator, 0 revenue. So they're trying to now to fire sale it, right?
That's insane.
There's nothing that she could have done to fix that.
Or prevent that.
Unless you have a crystal ball, right, or you're clairvoyant. So look, think about, hey, that's the first one. There's going to be a new company, a new product, and the next thing. And I have some techniques and tips in terms of my book on how to come up with the next idea. The same system I use, right? And you guys can buy the book if you're interested when it comes out. But otherwise, just persevere, stay passionate, don't get down on your luck. I've fallen 1,000 times before I got back up, and just trust the story. Don't trust rumors. Don't listen to bullshit. Just stay focused on what's at hand, and don't let people, especially strangers, because there's a lot of social media bullying that happens these days, right? Screw them, fuck them, right? DTF, right? Don't give a fuck. But just stay focused on your mission and believe in yourself, and have a surrounding kind of circle of mentors, and just follow through, man. Do what you fucking say.
Love that. Thanks so much, Charles.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
All right, man.